The balance of wrestling power clearly shifted in 1996. WCW took the lead in the Monday Night Wars over the WWF thanks almost entirely to the New World Order, via the 1-2 punch of the Outsider's arrival and Hulk Hogan's heel turn. Vince McMahon's product, meanwhile, tried to reset its feet amid Shawn Michaels' title run, Bret Hart's sabbatical, and Steve Austin's breakout as Stone Cold. And of course, there were the Supercards. Though both promotions delivered some strong pay-per-view outings in 1996, we're here to talk about the ones that weren't so stellar. The creme de la crap, the worst of the lot. A few of them bottomed out at mediocre, but as the list goes on, there'll be ones rotten enough for Isaac Yankem himself to extract. I'm Sam Driver from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 worst wrestling pay-per-views of 1996. Join us! Number 10, WWF Wrestlemania XII. On the 12th year of WrestleMania, Vinnie Mac gave to us a pretty middling WrestleMania in lieu of 12 drummers drumming, because Eric Bischoff had signed away 4 of the drummers to guaranteed deals. There have certainly been worse manias, hence why this one kicks off the list instead of sweating it out toward the end, but that said, WrestleMania 12 exposed just how empty the WWF roster had gotten. Long gone were the fuller-bodied, deeper manias of old. Only 6 matches lined the 2-hour and 40-minute card, one of which lasted over 60 minutes as a necessity. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels' Iron Man match isn't for all tastes. It boasts a strong final half hour, but the early going features more rest holds than a UFC snooze fest. The opening 6-man and Steve Austin vs. Savio Vega weren't that bad, but a dead Anaheim crowd made the show feel like a funeral at times. Really, the only fun part was watching Triple H's pedigree get no-sold before he lost to Warrior in 90 seconds. Still worth a chuckle, that one. Number 9, WWF In Your House Beware of Dog. This was the one where circumstances beyond the WWF's control took a decent-looking show on paper and rendered it a bit of a disaster. The 5-match In Your House took place in Florence, South Carolina, on the day a pretty gnarly storm happened to be rolling through. Right after a solid Mark Mero, Hunter Hearst Helmsley opener, the storm knocked out all the power in the venue, cutting the pay-per-view feed dead. Yep, not ideal. The feed was restored over an hour later, just in time for the planned WWF title bout between Shawn Michaels and the British Bulldog, hence the event's odd subheader. Michaels' heart wasn't in it due to belief that his match wouldn't even air, so what should have been an intense title bout was a rest-hold-filled slog, during which an irritated Shawn, then a white meat babyface, yelled something unsavory about a heckling fan. The other matches, which had actually taken place in the dark because the show must go on, were redone at a Tuesday TV taping for the replay airing. Credit where it's due though, Savio Vega and Steve Austin's strap match rules. Number 8, WCW World War III. 1 year earlier, World War III was a mostly good card, though the 60-man Battle Royal was pretty sluggish. But at least that Battle Royal had the allure of crowning a new world champion. The sequel was for a future world title match, though the date wasn't really specified. The Giant won during a fairly dramatic final sequence where Lex Luger had to try and overcome the 4-on-1 NWO odds, but it was a pretty boring 25 minutes before then. The rest of World War III was painfully underwhelming, sans the Ultimo Dragon Rey Mysterio Jr. opener for Dragon Monet's Litany of Belts. The 3-way match for the tag belts was also way too long and slow, though it's notable for the Outsiders inventing the pin your own partner to keep the gold trick, which the other teams broke up. The rest of the card felt like a Saturday Night B-show, between Harlem Heat versus the former Quebecers, Giant versus fellow AEW pre-show presenter Jeff Jarrett, and even Chris Jericho versus crooked ref Nick Patrick. Not really WCW's strongest lineup. Number 7, WWF In Your House, It's Time. The subheader was supposed to denote Vader's planned push as short-term WWF champion, but HBK didn't like the big man's working style, so Psycho Sid got to enjoy Vader's time instead. Alas, it was Sid, not Vader, that co-headlined one of the more forgettable secondary pay-per-views of the time, in which he and Bret Hart had a stopgap WWF title bout while Michaels sat on commentary. Sid won a pretty average match, capping off an afterthought of a night. The biggest lowlight highlight of its time was the glorified Texas death match between Undertaker and Paul Bearer's masked executioner, played by a greatly diminished Terry Gordy. Though the fight went to some interesting places, it lacked cohesion and flair and sadly marked the end of Gordy's relevance stateside. The rest of the night consisted of matches that were better than 2 stars, but probably not quite 3, like Helmsley vs. Mero for the IC belt and the recently debuted Flash Funk against a directionless Al Snow. Its time was really a Raw broadcast pretending to be a pay-per-view. Number 6, WCW SuperBrawl VI. This would be the night that Brian Pillman carried out one of the strangest worked shoots in pro wrestling history, securing his legitimate contractual release from WCW after walking out on a match with Kevin Sullivan. Bischoff thought he was in on the plan until the loose cannon signed a guaranteed deal with the WWF. Oops! Aside from Pillman's transgressive act, only a Randy Savage vs. Ric Flair cage match for the world title keeps Super Brawl from hitting rock bottom. The Hogan Giant half of the caged twin bill was pretty slow and stale. Meanwhile, the tag title bout pitting Sting and Luger against the Road Warriors was a disastrous double DQ where it seemed like nobody wanted to try or sell. Also, there was a crappy US title match between Conan and One Man Gang that felt like it was produced randomly on a wrestling simulator. A simulator that wants you to suffer because machines lack empathy. While the undercard isn't a total loss, the uppercard was really bailed out by another strong slice of Savage flair. Number 5, WWF Royal Rumble. If you ever want to see how bad things have gotten for the WWF by 1996, check out the Rumble. They had to fill it out with guest entries like Takao Omori, the Headhunters, Dory Funk Jr., and Doug Gilbert because the roster was so depleted. Vader and Jake Roberts made their debut and return respectively in the match, which means only 23 entrants were full-time WWF talents beforehand. Also, the match was really no bueno, a lame duck trek into an HBK repeat win. The WWF title bout between Brett and Undertaker was well beneath both men's standards, dragging out to over 28 minutes before a DQ finish to continue Taker's feud with Diesel. The only notable undercard occurrence was Goldust winning the IC title from Razor Ramon in a pretty average match. Throw in a heatless Smoking Guns Body Donners tag title bout and Jeff Jarrett versus Ahmed Johnson, and we're talking about one of the more underwhelming Royal Rumbles this side of Shane booking himself to be Superman. At least that one had a crazy story behind it. Number 4, WWF In Your House International Incident. A lot of WWF events in 1995 were really only as good as the matches Brett and/or Shawn had. If they didn't have a good showing or they didn't wrestle at all, see the October In Your House, then the card was pretty much doomed. Here in 1996, we have a secondary show that fits that bill, as Brett was off negotiating a new contract and Michaels was left to work a show-salvaging 6-man tag. The main event tag, where Shawn, Ahmed, and Sid faced Camp Cornette, was indeed very good, but merely very good, hardly worth the In Your House price tag. As for the rest of the night, it was another in a long line of showcases that revealed how thin the WWF roster really was. The Guns Body Donners tag title bout was even more heatless than their Rumble encounter. Mankind wrestled Henry Godwin, who filled in for an absent Jake Roberts. The Austin, Mero, and Undertaker Goldust matches were fine, but just topped out at fine. At a time when WCW was a towering inferno, the WWF expected fans to pay $15 or $20 for a glorified Roman candle. Number 3, WCW Slamboree. The Battle Bowl concept, while intriguing due to the endless possibilities, has rarely yielded a fun night of wrestling. Largely, that's because the matches have no blood feud vibe, as they're kayfabed random matchups. In 1996, WCW hauled the concept back out with a twist. The random matches were truly anything but random, as steady teams either ended up as partners, what a coincidence, or opponents, what a coincidence. And then almost none of the matches were any good. What a coincidence! Worse, WCW booked a tournament format, meaning we got a second round of dull matches between thrown together, though not really, teams. The finals was an 8-man battle royal in which DDP was the only pushed singles wrestler. Thankfully, he won. The rest of the card had some decent matches like Giant vs Sting and Conan vs Jushin Liger, while the Battle Bowl match pitting enemies Flair and Savage, what a coincidence, against Arn Anderson and Eddie Guerrero was fun but short. The rest of the night was a total waste of time. Good thing the NWO was on its way. Number 2, WWF SummerSlam. This was one of those sour taste shows where even the good stuff didn't sit right. The double main event consisted of 2 good matches, a subjective one in which Michaels retained the WWF title over Vader, and an objective novelty, the first ever Boiler Room brawl between Undertaker and Mankind. The latter bout is a little bit polarizing because of its unorthodox production, while the former is infamous for Michaels' in-match tantrum over a Vader blown spot. As for the rest of the night, the race for third best match ended in a 5-way collision at the starting line. The worst of the lot was Jerry Lawler and Jake Roberts' dreadful bout centered on Lawler mocking Jake's real-life alcoholism. Lawler cheated to win, then poured real liquor, not tea like they agreed on, down Roberts' throat. The 4-way match showed just how dismal the WWF's tandem picture was in comparison to a WCW that had the Outsiders, the Steiners, Harlem Heat, and the Nasty Boys. Then factor in mostly heel victories to force the crowd to cheer for polarizing Shawn at the end, and you can see why the WWF had sunk to second place. And number 1, WCW Uncensored. Really, only one match puts Uncensored on the bottom of this barrel. The goddamn Tower of Doom cage match where Hogan and Savage conspired to beat 8 heels in a multi-tiered steel cage at the back of the arena. It was one of the most convoluted, confusing, self-indulgent, and poorly organized matches there has ever been in pro wrestling history. Truly, it's a monument to the boundless ego of the Orange Goblin. The rest of the show doesn't get off lightly either. Giant versus the so-named Loch Ness was quick but awful, as was Medusa's intergender match with Colonel Robert Parker. DDP had to spend 16 minutes jobbing to Ed Leslie, who now portrayed a dancing fool called the Booty Man, whom DDP's then-wife Kimberly had to pretend was Fabio in tights. But yeah, back to that terrible, lousy cage match. It's truly a case where the silhouettes of 2 robots and a human should have been superimposed on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Uncensored was pretty bloody lousy before the main event, and then Hogan and Co. made sure to cement its badness with a certified anti-classic.